Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, today is going to be a double bonus video. We're going to talk about, is there a shadow inventory of new homes? And it's not even Halloween. And then we're going to talk about the Corelogic estimate for this year and the top 10 markets that it's predicting. So it's pretty fun. Okay, so shadow inventory, what does that even mean? We heard about this in 2013. That there was a shadow inventory of millions of foreclosures that never appeared, actually. What do they mean when they say shadow inventory of new homes?
So they mean homes that are somehow not on the market and builders are holding back for reasons that are nefarious.
Okay, so
Who
there are
knows?
homes that have been built
Yes.
that are just sitting there empty.
Yes.
Okay, so article comes out today. Here's the headline. Builder sentiment surges amid falling interest rates.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to throw this chart up here. This is the home builder sentiment. This goes back basically the last 2 years. 50 is average as sentiment. This is an index, so just 50 is average. You could see that it was 34 November, 37 December. It's 44 right now in January. It was certainly high beginning of 22 because interest rates were super low and the economy was kicking butt.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. And then it got worse as interest rates got worse. Juana, what two things would builders not do if they were sitting on a bunch of houses? Like if they had a bunch of houses that they built that were just sitting there, what would they not be doing?
Is this like me doing math in public?
No, yes. Just tell the people out there.
Okay.
What would they, if you were a builder and you just had a bunch of houses sitting around, what would you be trying to do?
Okay. So number one, they would not be pulling new building permits, right? That's the number one reason that's the number one thing that they would not be doing. They'd have no reason to do that.
Okay.
And of course, we know that builders in a lot of markets are trying to acquire more land, and they certainly would not be trying to do that if they were sitting on a lot of inventory. And we know that in a lot of markets, builders are trying to acquire new land. Now, not all builders are created equal, right? And they don't all have the same prospects for selling their product. So there are builders that maybe are not working on acquiring land, or maybe they're selling land to other builders. But when you're looking at the entire scope of what we're talking about, builders are acquiring land, builders are pulling permits, and that is an indication of their confidence going forward. Also, as far as I'm aware, all the surveys that are out there show builder confidence rising.
2023 was the largest profit ever for new home builders.
Correct.
2024, they're predicting they will build about 100,000 more houses than they built last year nationwide, and they're expecting the higher profit than last year.
Right.
Could either of those be possibly true if they had spent a ton of money to build houses and hadn't sold them, meaning they don't have revenue from those?
Not only would that not be possible, but we're also looking at, again, a labor shortage, which means labor is going to be more expensive for them. We're looking at a lumber shortage, which means lumber is going to be more expensive for them, and other material and supply chain issues, which of course means more expense. So now if your product is costing more money to build and you are still continuing to make record profits, that tells you that the demand for your product is out there, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there's this inventory of surplus homes, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about when we're talking about the shadow inventory. These are surplus homes. These are homes that are not on the market, but they are sitting there empty. And of course, if they were sitting there empty, they would be costing the builders money, and that would go against the grain with these record profits.
Here's a quote from the article. As home building expands in 2024, the market will see growing supply-side challenges in the form of higher prices and or shortages of lumber, lots, and labor. So not enough land, not enough labor. That could push home prices higher. If you had a ton of houses sitting around and you dumped more homes on the market, that would not push home prices higher.
Correct.
Okay, here's another quote from the article. I do expect to see another bumper spike in demand come into the buying season, which usually comes here right after the Super Bowl, and then February into the spring market. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand, so I think we're going to see a really big spring. Now, this is nationally. This isn't just Vegas. This is nationally.
Right. So, of course, we've talked about this a lot. Real estate is hyper-local. So your market or your neighborhood may or may not experience this, but what the outlook that we're discussing is national.
Okay. Now, this is not the first time we've had a shadow inventory that people have theorized about. We famously got called out in 2012 and beginning of 2013 because we were denying the fact that there were like 1 or 2 million homes that were shadow inventory, that foreclosures going to flood the market. Even though that's literally what we did for a living, we worked with the banks, and the banks were saying we don't have all these. We've never heard of these homes. We don't even know where they are. So the banks don't know where they are, but there's this thing going around with this shadow inventory, right? And then it turns out we made a video, and you can go find it. It's from 2013, where we talked about shadow inventory, and Wanda basically said, "Then show me the homes. If we have all these homes, and show them to me." Well, here's an article headline article from 2013. Las Vegas Valley shadow inventory in housing smaller than forecast. Okay, this was about 6 months after that came out there were going to be all these homes that hit the market, and this was just in Vegas. Okay, despite estimates of 50,000 to 100,000 foreclosures yet to hit the market, the inventory of real estate-owned homes available for sale dropped to 401 in December. A report from Tycor Title in Nevada shows this is in 2013. Now, what was funny was back then, probably a lot of those 401 were ours. Yes. We probably had over 10% of those were ours. Mm-hmm. If we'd had 50 to 100,000 foreclosures, that would have been meant another, in Vegas, probably 5,000 sales. Like instead of selling 3,000, we would have sold 8,000, right?
Right.
Because most of them would have been Fannie, Freddie, Bank of America. The big banks would have had them, and that's really who we work for. So we kind of knew what we were talking about, and we never really saw it. We're not going to sit here with the new homes, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Anecdotally, though, tell us about, because you were telling me about a new home place that basically, they haven't even built the lot. They haven't put the lots for sale, and they've already stopped taking interest.
Right, yeah. So, again, it's a high-end community here in Vegas on the west side of town, and they have a very limited number of lots. They have multiple interests per lot, and these are multi-million-dollar lots, and these are just the lots, not including the home. So, and they've already stopped taking deposits. They've already pretty much filled up their dance card for the time being, while they're trying to figure out how to proceed with this high level of interest.
Also, new home builders, if they believed a flood of properties were going to hit the resale market, would not want to compete with that.
Correct.
Okay. Now,
so, to that point, remember, new home builders build in a variety of price points, and, anywhere from the low end all the way to, of course, the luxury end. So there's a lot of variety in there. However, here in Vegas, and I've said this before, most new home builders, if they have any standing inventory, it's a couple of units, not a lot. So there is not a lot of room for these new home builders to have substantial price reductions. Do they have price reductions? Sometimes. But remember, these are price reductions on standing inventory. So is it really a price reduction, or is it just not quite charging as much for those upgrades that they've already installed? So, you can kind of look at it one way or another.
Okay. There's no shadow inventory for new homes. I don't know where this is coming from, but this is just the same kind of made up nonsense. There's zero data. Like, people are saying it, but then show me, where are the houses? There's nobody, these are publicly traded companies. Mm-hmm. They would have to make statements stating, hey, look, we have all these homes that we haven't sold.
Right.
None of them have made that statement. Okay.
So I think a lot of people, and we've had people go in the comments and say this, that they've driven through neighborhoods and there are all these vacant homes. Well, yes and no. Yes, they are American homes, but they are in various stages of construction.
Yeah.
So just because you have four walls and the doors up doesn't mean that the interior is finished. That doesn't make it standing inventory. It just means that they're in the process of completing the home. And in some cases, they're awaiting materials. And we've talked about this a lot because there are supply chain issues. In some cases, they are awaiting materials. And so, yes, those homes do sit there longer than they should because there's a material shortage and the home cannot be completed and turned over to the end user until it is complete.
Here's what you do. Next time you drive through a neighborhood and you believe that these are homes that are sitting around vacant and just no one to buy them, walk in the sales office and say, hey, I see you got a bunch of homes sitting around empty. So why don't you sell me one super cheap? What kind of deal can you give me? And see what they say.
Well, so
that's all you have to do. Just walk in and say, hey, will you make me a deal on one of these houses that hasn't been sold yet? And just see what they say.
Well, your first challenge is the sales office even open? Because in a lot of these communities, the sales office is no longer open because the community is sold out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't appear that way because there are homes in various stages of construction, and maybe there are even numerous empty lots. So you might think that there are homes available, but there are not. So for example, you might look at a community and there are a dozen empty lots. So you think, well, clearly they must have homes for sale. Well, they do and they don't. They may not have released those lots and they're not ready to, and they're not even taking any deposits on them, not until they release them. Remember, they release lots in small numbers, both to maximize profit, because every time they release new lots, there is an increase in price, and because, like we said before, there's limited material, limited labor, and so they are only building a limited number of homes at a time because of those reasons.
And they also may have taken the deposit money, signed a contract, they know what house they're going to build on the lot. It was the last maybe 5 or 6 lots, so now they leave. The salespeople don't stay there anymore. They've
Correct.
sold out. It's now the construction manager's job to finish them, and if something falls out, big deal. They'll resell it. They'll sell them before they're finished to somebody else.
Right. So when they do resell homes that have fallen out of escrow in communities that have basically been closed out, they resell them from other communities. So that means that, let's say you have a community in the Northwest, and the sales office has been closed, and something falls out, but there's a sister community in the Southwest, then they'll sell the lot in the Northwest from the sister community in the Southwest without having to reopen that sales office. They'll just make an appointment, meet you up there, show you around, and then take you back down to the South. And that's where you'll do your paperwork, and that's where you're going to have your conversations. Because remember, you only really visit the sales office when you're putting down your reservation, and that's about it. Your contract is signed electronically. All your upgrades and that sort of thing are done at the design center. So there really is no need for the sales office aside from showing the community when the community is active.
Okay, Corelogic just came out with their forecast and a bunch of data. This is very cool, so we'll throw up the first chart here. Over on the left you have current. Now this was November to November. It was up month over month 0.2%, because remember this fall was super hot, right? And then year over year it was 5.2%. They're projecting month over month, and this was November to December down 0.2%, 0.2%, but year over year forecast up 2.5% for November 23 to November 24. Now that's nationally, that's an average. Okay, what was cool was this chart here. Now this chart here is all the states year over year change. Now if you look at the states, and we all know this, the South and a lot of the East did really well. This is over 7%. So everything in red is 7%. The pinks, the varying colors of pinks are anywhere from 3 to 7%. You can see Nevada's in the 3 to 5 range year over year change. And then only 2 markets, or really 3 markets, were less than 1% increase. And that was Idaho, Utah, and then Washington, D.C., which is all the way over there. You can't really see it, but so basically we had a really strong real estate market, given the fact that interest rates were pushing up against 8%, right?
Right.
Okay, the coolest thing on this was the top 10 markets. And if you look at this, what sticks out the most is Vegas. was in the top 10. It was 3%. Chicago and Boston kind of surprised me, up 6%. San Diego 7.7%. We kind of knew that because that market is a lot like Vegas. There's no inventory. There's literally no inventory. Stuff disappears. In fact, I looked at a whole neighborhood. It was this older homes built in the 50s, and there were like no houses for sale. And I thought it was a mistake. I thought I had my settings wrong, but I made the map bigger, and I realized we're like one or two outside the neighborhood. Miami 8.3%. Won it 3%. Was year over year, November of 23. That's a lot different than down 40 or 50%. Like a lot of people said, home prices would collapse, and housing crash. I don't see any housing crash.
Well, so the housing crash didn't happen.
Okay.
It got a reprieve.
It got a reprieve. It was the 5th year in a row we were supposed to crash. It didn't crash.
Right.
But this is apparently the year. This is the year it's going to crash. It's going to crash even though it's so bad, demand is so bad, new home builders are betting their dollars that they're going to build more homes and make more money.
Right.
And there's going to be more people to buy houses. That's how bad it is. The new home builders are going to flood the market with new homes if they can build them. I don't personally think they'll be able to build them all. I think they're going to have a hard time between permitting, labor, and the whole thing. I think that's going to be...
Well, I know we've talked about that. Those are limiting factors. And that's part of what's driving prices as well.
Right. Okay. What did you think of when you read the sentiment report? Because the sentiment report, it's three things of sentiment that they look at. One is how many people walked into the sales office. It's an actual number. They track it. And so it was higher than the previous month. The next one was how many homes they have under contract, like actual contracts they signed. That was up. And then the third one is their belief that what the next 12 months will be like, like in general, what they believe. And all three of them were higher.
They are. And part of the reason why they're going to be more profitable is, of course, that their borrowing costs are lower than they've been. Okay. So that's also going to help them.
And I think they also believe that interest rates have peaked. It's interesting. We said at the beginning of 2022 that these cycles last 18 months. This was in January. So we said July or August of 2023, they would peak. And I think we missed it by a couple months. I think they actually peaked in October, right, at 8%. Yeah. So we missed it by 2 whole months. It ended up being basically like a 20-month cycle instead of an 18-month cycle of interest rates going up. But I think they realize that mortgage rates are going to be falling throughout the year. And we kind of like dodged the bullet here. No housing crash. The economy didn't collapse completely. We stamped out inflation, and we're back to our normal. Looks like we're back to our normal housing market.
So technically, we actually nailed it right on the head, if you really want to think about it.
Okay.
And the reason I say we nailed it on the head is because we said that mortgage rates, that the Fed would increase rates for 18 months, and that is what happened. The last rate increase was at the 18-month mark.
Yeah, exactly. It was.
And then what the mortgage market did after that was largely independent of the Fed, because the Fed took no further action.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I like it. It's just tough being right all the time about housing. And the Crash Bros, I don't even know why people still watch all the channels. To me, it's just mind-boggling. So,
and of course, they don't have the wardrobe we have, so I just don't get it at all.
The theory I've been given is that they're praying for a crash because they missed out on buying a house. Now they want to buy a house. But like, if home prices fell enough, the number of people who would flood in, including institutional buyers and cash buyers, like we just had a couple new investors who bought houses, and they just put tenants in them, right? Tomorrow, put new tenants in them. I'm sure they would come back and want to buy a bunch more houses if they thought home prices were going to fall 5 or 10%. They would probably be thrilled to grab a couple more homes.
Right.
I see supply and demand working here, and I think there's too much money on the sideline, and there's too much pent up demand. People trying to buy to let prices fall. Supply and demand.
Right.
Yep.
All right. So as far as the Crash Bros are concerned, I think they're like a car crash. Everybody wants to look. So I think that's why the Crash Bros get
they're
looks.
A train wreck.
Yes.
But the train is on fire, and if they don't know what they're talking about.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We do, so we're glad that you're here and you're participating. That means that you have to leave us a comment. So leave us a comment, let us know what you think and what's happening in your neighborhood. We appreciate you watching. Please like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.